George Clooney hadn't planned on starting a war that morning. He'd agreed to the CNN interview primarily to promote his new humanitarian initiative in Sudan. But when Christine Amanpour asked about the current political climate, something in him snapped. Perhaps it was the lack of sleep after his red-eye flight from Geneva, or maybe it was the accumulation of frustrations he'd been bottling up for months. "You know, Christine," he said, leaning forward in his chair, his signature smile nowhere to be seen. "We're watching a man systematically dismantle everything this country has built over decades. Trump's handling of the refugee crisis isn't just misguided, it's morally bankrupt." The studio fell silent. Even the cameramen stopped fidgeting with their equipment. Clooney, usually so measured and diplomatic, continued with an intensity that surprised everyone present. "When I visit refugee camps, I see families torn apart by policies made by someone who's never stepped foot in these places, never looked into the eyes of a mother who's lost everything. He sits in his golden tower, making decisions that affect millions, and he doesn't have the faintest idea of the human cost." The interview clip went viral within hours. Liberal media praised Clooney's passionate advocacy, while conservative outlets accused him of being another out-of-touch Hollywood elite. But it was Trump's response, fired off at 3:47 a.m., that turned a controversial interview into an all-out feud. "Washed-up George Clooney, terrible ratings lately. Should stick to making second-rate movies instead of attacking your favorite president. Another Hollywood nobody who knows nothing about real politics. Sad." The tweet exploded across social media, with hashtag Clooney vs. Trump trending worldwide. Late-night shows had a field day, and political cartoonists worked overtime. But in a sleek office in downtown Los Angeles, Miranda Chen, the newly appointed director of the prestigious Golden Gate International Film Festival, saw something else: opportunity. Miranda had been struggling with the festival's declining relevance. Traditional film festivals were fighting for attention in an era of streaming and viral content. She needed something spectacular to revive interest, and this feud had dropped into her lap like a gift from the entertainment gods. "Give me Victor on the phone," she ordered her assistant, already formulating a plan that would either make her career or end it spectacularly. Victor Reeves, her head of programming, answered on the first ring. "Miranda, I assume you're calling about. We're going to invite them both to be judges." She cut in, her voice thrumming with excitement. "Trump and Clooney on the same panel. Can you imagine the ratings?" There was a long pause on the other end. "Miranda, that's either brilliant or insane. Probably both. But they'll never agree." "Oh, they will," Miranda said, a smile spreading across her face. "Because I know exactly how to make it impossible for either of them to say no." She swiveled in her chair to face the San Francisco skyline, her mind already racing with possibilities. This wasn't just about ratings anymore. She was about to turn a prestigious film festival into the most talked-about event of the year. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice wondered if she was about to create something she wouldn't be able to control. What she didn't know then was that both men would indeed accept her invitation, setting in motion a chain of events that would shake Hollywood to its core and force everyone involved to question what they valued more, their principles or their pride. Miranda Chen's plan was elegant in its simplicity, but diabolical in its execution. She knew that to get two of the most strong-willed men in America to do her bidding, she needed to make them think it was their idea. For Trump, the pitch came through Roger Maxwell, a conservative media mogul who owed Miranda a favor. "Mr. President," Roger said during their weekly golf game, "word is that Clooney's being offered a judge position at Golden Gate. He'll probably use it as another platform to attack your policies. Shame there's no one there to counter his narrative." Trump gripped his golf club tighter. "Clooney thinks he understands cinema? I've been in movies. Home Alone 2, very successful, very popular. Maybe it's time someone showed these Hollywood liberals what real success looks like. Within hours, Miranda received word that Trump was considering the invitation she hadn't even sent yet. For Clooney, the approach was different. His agent, Sarah Widman, received a confidential memo, accidentally leaked from the festival's planning committee. It detailed Trump's potential involvement and concerns about the festival becoming a platform for political propaganda. "George needs to see this," Sarah said, forwarding the memo. She knew her client well. His sense of duty would kick in, especially if he thought the festival's artistic integrity was at stake. Clooney was in his Lake Como villa when he read the memo. "They can't be serious," he muttered, running a hand through his silver hair. "A film festival isn't a political rally." He paced the length of his study, stopping to stare at the vintage movie posters on the walls. Pictures of Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator and Orson Welles' Citizen Kane seemed to watch him with knowing eyes. Miranda's official invitations went out the next day, carefully worded to appeal to each man's ego, while making it clear that declining would be seen as backing down from the challenge. The media frenzy that followed was beyond even Miranda's expectations. Film critics debated the merits of politicizing the festival. Celebrity friends took sides. Betting websites started taking odds on whether the two would come to blows during the opening ceremony. But it was the festival's ticket sales that truly shocked everyone. Within hours of announcing the controversial judging panel, every event was sold out. The waiting list grew to thousands. Miranda's phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from sponsors wanting to increase their involvement. "We've created a monster," Victor said during their emergency board meeting. "How are we going to control this?" Miranda adjusted her glasses, studying the security proposals before her. "We don't control it. We channel it. Every great film needs conflict, doesn't it?" What she didn't share with the board was her growing unease. Her personal email was filling up with threatening messages from both sides of the political spectrum. Several high-profile directors had quietly withdrawn their films from competition, and her sources told her that both Trump and Clooney were assembling teams of lawyers to review every aspect of their contracts. The situation grew more complex when an anonymous source leaked the festival's judging criteria to the press. The documents revealed that the top prize winner would receive not just the traditional Golden Gate Award, but also unprecedented distribution deals and funding for future projects. The stakes were no longer just about pride. There were now serious cultural and financial implications. As Miranda left the office that evening, she noticed a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street. It hadn't been there that morning. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Be careful what you wish for." She quickened her pace to her car, her heels clicking against the pavement. The festival was still 3 weeks away, but the game had already begun, and Miranda was starting to realize that she might not be the only one playing it. The Golden Gate International Film Festival's opening ceremony resembled a presidential debate more than a celebration of cinema. Police barricades separated pro-Trump and pro-Clooney protesters outside San Francisco's historic Castro Theater. News helicopters circled overhead, and security personnel outnumbered guests 3 to 1. Inside her office, Miranda Chen was having a crisis of her own. "What do you mean they can't sit together?" she demanded into her phone. Trump's team had just informed her that for security reasons, the former president required a separate entrance and viewing area. Clooney's representatives were simultaneously insisting on strict protocols about press access and questioning procedures. "Miss Chen?" Her assistant poked her head in. "There's another issue. Someone leaked the seating chart to TMZ." Miranda closed her eyes and counted to 10. When she opened them, her expression was steel. "Tell everyone new plan. No assigned seating. First come, first served, like musical chairs for the elite." The real chaos began at sunset. Trump arrived first, his motorcade causing gridlock throughout the theater district. He emerged wearing a tuxedo and his signature red tie, waving to the crowd as if he were at a campaign rally. "This is going to be tremendous, folks. Nobody knows movies like I do, believe me." 17 minutes later, Miranda noted the timing with suspicion. Clooney's Tesla pulled up. He stepped out looking effortlessly elegant in Tom Ford, accompanied by his wife Amal in a stunning vintage Dior gown. The contrast between the two men's entrances couldn't have been more striking. The ceremony began with Miranda's welcome speech, carefully crafted to acknowledge the elephant in the room while maintaining the festival's dignity. "Cinema has always been about dialogue," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "About different perspectives coming together to create something greater than themselves." Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. As part of the opening ceremony, each judge had to announce one personal criterion they would use to evaluate films. When Trump's turn came, he stood with his characteristic swagger. "I know winning. Nobody knows winning like I do. These films, they need to be winners. No sad endings, no losing. America doesn't like losers." The audience's reaction was mixed: nervous laughter, scattered applause, and a few audible groans. Clooney, seated across the aisle, maintained a poker face that would have impressed Vegas professionals. When it was his turn, Clooney rose slowly. "Cinema," he began, his voice measured, "has always been about truth. Sometimes that truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes it makes us face things we'd rather ignore. I'll be looking for films that aren't afraid to tell those truths." The tension in the room was palpable. Miranda watched as both men locked eyes across the theater, neither willing to look away first. The standoff was broken by an unexpected power surge that plunged the theater into darkness for 3 seconds. When the lights came back on, there was an empty seat next to Trump, one that had definitely been occupied moments before. As the opening film began to play, Miranda's phone vibrated with a text from Victor. "Check your email now." She slipped out to the lobby and opened her inbox. The subject line made her blood run cold. "Proof of manipulation release in 1 hour." Attached was a complete record of her careful orchestration, including the leaked memo to Clooney and the conversation with Roger Maxwell. The sender was anonymous, but the message was clear. "The real show is about to begin." Miranda looked back at the theater doors, behind which hundreds of the industry's most powerful people were watching the opening film. She had wanted drama, but not like this. As she stood there, another text came through. "Meet me in the projection room. Come alone." The festival was about to take a turn that even she couldn't have scripted. Miranda's heels echoed through the empty corridor as she climbed the stairs to the projection room. Her mind raced through possibilities. Was it one of Trump's people? Clooney's team? Or someone else entirely? The projection room door was ajar, spilling a thin line of light onto the floor. She pushed it open to find Victor Reeves, her head of programming, sitting calmly beside the humming projector. "Surprised?" he asked, not looking up from his phone. "You shouldn't be. Did you really think you were the only one playing this game?" Before Miranda could respond, the door closed behind her. She spun around to find Sarah Widman, Clooney's agent, blocking the exit. "We need to talk," Sarah said, her expression unreadable. "You're working together?" Miranda's mind struggled to make sense of it. "But why?" "Sit down, Miranda," Victor cut in. "It's time you learn what's really going on." The truth, as it turned out, was more complex than anything Miranda had imagined. Victor and Sarah weren't the masterminds. They were representatives of a shadow group of industry power players who called themselves the Circle. For decades, they'd been orchestrating conflicts and controversies to maintain Hollywood's relevance in an increasingly fragmented media landscape. "The Clooney-Trump feud?" Sarah smiled. "We planted those questions in the CNN interview. We knew exactly how both men would react. Your brilliant idea to bring them together as judges?" Victor added. "We leaked that concept to you through 3 different channels, knowing you'd think it was your own inspiration." Miranda sank into a chair, her world spinning. "But the threatening texts, the blackout." "Insurance," Sarah explained. "We needed you scared enough to be malleable, but confident enough to keep the show running." Down in the theater, the opening film was reaching its climax. Through the projection window, Miranda could see Trump and Clooney, seated on opposite sides, both apparently engrossed in the movie. But now she noticed something else. Subtle glances between certain audience members, nearly imperceptible nods exchanged. "What do you want from me?" she finally asked. Victor leaned forward. "Tomorrow, during the first judging session, something's going to happen. Something big. And you're going to help us make sure it goes exactly as planned." He slid a tablet across the table. On it was a video clip that made Miranda's eyes widen. "This is real?" Sarah finished. "Very. The question is, which of our distinguished judges do you think should see it first?" Meanwhile, in the theater below, the dynamics were shifting in unexpected ways. During a particularly powerful scene, Clooney found himself nodding in appreciation, only to notice Trump doing the same. Their eyes met briefly, a flash of mutual understanding passing between them, before both quickly looked away. In the third row, Amal Clooney was typing rapidly on her phone, her legal training triggering warning bells about what she'd overheard in the ladies' room. And in the back of the theater, Roger Maxwell was receiving a text that would append everyone's plans. "She found the files. Protocol 17 now in effect." The opening film ended to enthusiastic applause, but few in the audience had actually paid attention to its final scenes. Too many private dramas were unfolding in the darkness. Too many schemes were approaching their tipping points. As the lights came up, Miranda descended from the projection room, her steps heavy with the weight of her decision. She had until morning to choose a side, knowing that either choice would have devastating consequences. The festival's tagline, "Where art meets truth," had taken on an entirely new meaning. What no one knew was that the real catalyst for chaos wasn't going to come from the circle, or Trump, or Clooney, or even Miranda. It was going to come from an unexpected source who had been quietly watching everything unfold, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The morning of the first judging session arrived with the weight of inevitability. Miranda sat in her office, the tablet from the circle heavy in her hands, when her secretary burst in. "Ma'am, you need to see this." Every news channel was running the same story. An anonymous source had leaked emails revealing that the circle had been manipulating Hollywood for decades. Their schemes, their players, their puppet strings, all exposed. But that wasn't what made Miranda's breath catch. Mixed in with the circle's exposed documents was evidence that both Trump and Clooney had known about the manipulation all along. Each had been playing his own game, using the circle's machinations for their own ends. The feud, it seemed, wasn't entirely manufactured, but both men had amplified it deliberately, each believing they could outmaneuver the other. The festival's main theater was chaos. Sarah and Victor were nowhere to be found. Circle members were frantically making calls. But all activity ceased when Trump and Clooney walked in, together. "Ladies and gentlemen," Clooney addressed the stunned crowd, his trademark smile now carrying a hint of steel. "I believe we've all been enjoying quite a show." "A tremendous show," Trump added, his usual bombast tempered by something that almost looked like amusement. "Maybe the best show ever." It was Amal Clooney who stepped forward to explain. She had been the one quietly gathering evidence for months, building a case against the circle's industry manipulation. Trump's legal team, surprisingly, had been doing the same. Both sides had discovered each other's investigations and made a secret pact, used the festival as a trap to expose everything.
"The real art of the deal," Trump said, "is knowing who's trying to deal you out. And the real truth in cinema," Clooney added, "is that sometimes the best story is the one happening off-screen."
Miranda stood frozen, realizing that while everyone had been playing chess, these two apparent enemies had been playing a different game entirely. The tablet in her hands now seemed like a prop in someone else's play. But there was one final twist no one had anticipated. As Trump and Clooney moved to leave the theater, the lights dimmed unexpectedly. On the screen appeared footage from the previous night, not the incriminating video the circle had prepared, but something else entirely. It was a montage of moments captured throughout the festival's preparation, Miranda's genuine passion for cinema in early planning meetings, her fight to maintain artistic integrity despite pressure from sponsors, her quiet work ensuring independent filmmakers wouldn't be overshadowed by the political drama. The final clip showed her late at night, watching submissions from unknown directors, tears in her eyes at their raw talent. The house lights came up to reveal Roger Maxwell standing by the projector.
"The circle forgot something fundamental about Hollywood," he announced. "The best stories come from truth. And sometimes the truth is that the person being played is actually the one we should have been watching all along."
Trump and Clooney turned to Miranda.
"We had our game," Clooney said, "but you had your festival. And that's why,"
Trump declared, in perhaps his first truly unscripted moment of the event,
"we're staying to judge. For real this time."
The festival proceeded over the next week, transformed but somehow stronger. The films were judged on their merits, the politics faded to background noise, and the art took center stage. Trump and Clooney found themselves in heated debates about cinematography and narrative structure rather than politics, their shared love of film transcending their differences. The circle's exposure led to widespread industry reforms. Miranda kept her position, her unplanned integrity becoming the festival's greatest asset. And a new phrase entered the Hollywood lexicon,
"pulling a Golden Gate,"
meaning to turn manipulation back on the manipulators. In the end, the festival's top prize went to a small independent film about reconciliation and truth. During the closing ceremony, Trump and Clooney presented the award together, their previous feud now feeling like a staged production from a different era. As the festival closed, Miranda found a note on her desk signed by both men.
"Sometimes the best direction is the one that wasn't in the script."
She smiled, pinned the note to her wall, and began planning next year's festival. This time, she knew, the only drama would be on the screen where it belonged.
Tell us in the comments what part of this story impressed you the most. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the world of incredible events.